The red warning lights flashed across the command center as Admiral Jake Morrison stared at the massive screen showing Earth from space. He had seen many things in his 30 years of military service, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien message had arrived just 2 hours ago, and already the entire planet was holding its breath. Captain Lisa Hayes walked quickly across the metal floor, her boots making sharp sounds in the quiet room. She carried a small device in her hands that contained the decoded alien transmission. Her face was pale, and Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "Admiral, we have finished working on the message," Lisa said as she stopped beside his chair. "The translation computers have been running non-stop, and we are confident about what it says." Jake turned to face her. Around them, dozens of technicians and officers worked at their stations, monitoring communications from across the solar system. Everyone knew something big was happening, but only a few people in the room knew exactly what. "Show me," Jake said simply. Lisa activated the device, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. Strange symbols appeared first, then slowly changed into English words. The message was short but carried enormous weight. "To the species known as humans of the planet Earth, you are hereby summoned to appear before the Galactic Council for evaluation and potential membership in our organization. This is not a request. You will present yourselves at Nexus Prime within 60 standard days. Failure to comply will result in immediate sanctions. The Council has spoken." Jake read the message 3 times before speaking. "Sanctions. They make it sound like a business meeting, but we both know what that really means," Lisa nodded grimly. "Our intelligence suggests that sanctions from the Galactic Council usually mean the complete destruction of the target species." The door to the command center opened, and Commander Pete Sullivan entered. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes who had been Earth's chief military strategist for the past 15 years. Behind him walked Dr. Amy Foster, a woman in her 40s who led humanity's psychological warfare research division. "I assume you have both read the message," Pete said as he approached Jake's position. "We have," Jake replied. "What do we know about this Galactic Council?" Dr. Foster stepped forward and activated her own holographic display. Images of various alien species appeared in the air, along with star maps and military assessments. "The Galactic Council consists of 12 alien civilizations that have controlled this part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. She began. "They claim to maintain peace, but our analysis suggests they eliminate any species they consider too dangerous or aggressive." Pete added, "We have been secretly communicating with the Zephyrian Empire for the past 2 years. They are our closest alien allies, though the Council does not know about this relationship. The Zephyrians have warned us that this evaluation is really a death sentence disguised as an opportunity." Jake studied the alien faces on the display. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled living crystals, and a few appeared to be made of pure energy. All of them had one thing in common: they looked powerful and ancient. "How many species have gone through this evaluation process?" Jake asked. "According to Zephyrian records, 47 species have been summoned for evaluation in the past 1,000 years, Dr. Foster replied. "None of them were accepted for membership. All of them disappeared shortly after their evaluation." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Jake walked over to the large windows that looked out at Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. Somewhere down there, billions of people were living their normal lives, unaware that their entire species might be facing extinction. "What kind of military forces does the Council have?" Jake asked without turning around. Pete consulted his notes. "Each member species contributes ships and soldiers to a combined fleet. The crystalline hegemony alone has over 50,000 warships. The Machine Collective has automated defense systems that can destroy entire star systems. The Psionic Dominion can control minds across vast distances. And they expect us to impress them with our primitive human technology," Lisa said bitterly. Jake turned back to face the group. "Maybe that is exactly what we should do." Dr. Foster raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, Admiral?" "They expect US to be primitive, they expect us to be weak. They expect us to follow the same pattern as every other species they have evaluated. Jake walked back to his chair and sat down. What if we give them something completely different? Pete leaned forward with interest. Go on. Every species that has faced the Council has probably tried to impress them with their best weapons, their strongest ships, their most advanced technology, Jake continued, and every one of those species was found lacking compared to civilizations that have had thousands of years to develop. Dr. Foster began to smile as she understood where Jake's thinking was leading. But we do not have to compete with their technology. We have something they have never encountered before. Exactly, Jake said. We have human thinking. We have human adaptability. We have the human ability to turn any situation into an advantage. Lisa looked confused. But how do we demonstrate that to beings who can destroy planets? Pete stood up and began pacing. We do not show them our weapons, we show them our minds. We prove that humans are not just another species with better or worse technology. We prove that we are something entirely new. Dr. Foster was already taking notes on her device. I can begin psychological profiles of each council member species immediately. If we understand how they think, we can predict how they will react to different approaches. Good, Jake said. Pete, I want you to start selecting our delegation. But I do not want diplomats and politicians. I want our best military minds disguised as ordinary people. You want to send soldiers pretending to be civilians? Lisa asked. I want to send our most elite warriors disguised as harmless bureaucrats. Jake corrected. Let the council think they are evaluating a typical diplomatic mission. They will never suspect that everyone in the room is actually a highly trained Special Forces operative. Pete grinned. That could work. We select people who can pass as diplomats, scientists, and support staff, but every single one of them is actually a master of warfare in their own specialty. Dr. Foster looked up from her notes. We will need at least 3 months to properly prepare. 60 days is not enough time to train people to properly deceive beings who have been evaluating species for millennia. Then we better get started immediately, Jake said. He turned to Lisa. Captain Hayes, I want you to coordinate with our Zephyrian allies. We need every piece of intelligence they can provide about the Council and their evaluation procedures. Yes. Sir, Lisa replied. Jake stood and looked at each person in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We are going to turn a death sentence into an opportunity. We are going to walk into the lion's den and come out as the new kings of the jungle. Dr. Foster closed her device and looked at Jake. What if we fail? What if they see through our deception? Jake walked back to the windows and looked down at Earth one more time. Then humanity will face extinction fighting on our own terms instead of begging for mercy on theirs. But I do not think we will fail. The Galactic Council has spent 10,000 years dealing with species that think like them. They have never encountered humans before. Pete joined Jake at the window. When do we leave? The ship Defiance will be ready for departure in 55 days, Jake replied. Ambassador Katie Brooks will lead the delegation, but she will have backup that the Council never expects. As the meeting ended and people began to leave the command center, Jake remained at the window. Somewhere out in space, 12 alien civilizations were preparing to judge humanity. They had no idea that humanity was also preparing to judge them. The game was about to begin, and for the first time in galactic history, the prey was setting the trap. The ship Defiance moved slowly through space toward the massive structure that appeared in front of them. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching through the main viewing screen as Nexus Prime grew larger with each passing hour. The artificial world was unlike anything humans had ever seen before. "Look at the size of that thing," whispered Lieutenant Mike Carter, the ship's navigation officer. "It must be at least 3 times bigger than our moon." Ben nodded but kept his expression calm. Around him, his crew performed their duties with professional efficiency, but he could sense their nervousness. They all knew what this mission really meant for humanity's future. Ambassador Katie Brooks entered the bridge, wearing the formal diplomatic uniform that made her look like any other career diplomat. Only Ben and a few others knew that she had spent 15 years in special forces before taking this assignment. Her calm demeanor and polite smile hid the mind of one of humanity's most dangerous warriors. "Captain Rodriguez, are we on schedule for docking?" Katie asked in the pleasant tone she had practiced for months. "Yes, Ambassador. We should reach the docking bay in approximately 2 hours," Ben replied. "The Council's traffic control has been very specific about our approach route." Dr. Amy Foster joined them on the bridge, carrying a small device that monitored local communications. She appeared to be a simple research scientist, but her real job was to analyze every piece of information they could gather about their hosts. "I have been listening to local transmissions," Amy said quietly. "The Council representatives are already discussing our arrival. They seem very confident about the outcome of our evaluation." Katie smiled, but there was something cold in her eyes. Confidence can be a weakness if it is not properly supported by facts. Through the viewing screen, they could see the docking bays of Nexus Prime. Hundreds of alien ships moved in and out of the structure, representing dozens of different species from across the galaxy. Some ships were sleek and beautiful, others looked like floating cities, and a few appeared to be made of materials that hurt to look at directly. "There," Ben pointed to a section of the station. "Those are Council military vessels." The ships were enormous, bristling with weapons that could probably destroy entire planets. Energy fields surrounded them that made the space around them shimmer like heat waves. Even at this distance, the human crew could feel the power radiating from the alien warships. Lieutenant Sarah Davis came over from her communications station. "Captain, we are receiving final docking instructions. They want us to proceed to Bay 94. "Acknowledged," Ben replied. He turned to Katie. "Ambassador, are your people ready?" Katie nodded. "Dr. Foster's research team is prepared, as is my diplomatic staff. We all understand our roles." What the Council did not know was that Katie's diplomatic staff included some of humanity's most elite soldiers. The man they thought was a simple translator was actually Master Sergeant Tony Clark, an expert in hand-to-hand combat and weapons improvisation. The woman serving as Katie's personal assistant was really Captain Linda Brooks, a specialist in electronic warfare and sabotage. The Defiance docked smoothly with Nexus Prime, and the human delegation prepared to disembark. As they walked through the airlock, they entered a world that challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization. The corridors of Nexus Prime were vast, with ceilings that disappeared into darkness far above. Alien beings of every imaginable shape and size moved through the passages, going about their daily business. Some walked on legs, others floated through the air, and a few seemed to exist as pure energy contained in mechanical shells. "Stay together and remember your training," Katie said quietly as they followed their alien escort toward the council chambers. Their guide was a member of the Ethereal Lords, a species that looked like a tall, thin humanoid made of blue light. It spoke without moving its mouth, and its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Council is eager to begin your evaluation, humans," the guide said. "It has been some time since we have encountered a new species." Dr. Foster pretended to take notes about the station's architecture, but she was actually recording everything for later analysis. The layout of the corridors, the positions of security checkpoints, the behavior patterns of different alien species, all of this information would be valuable if their mission went wrong. They passed through several security checkpoints, each one more advanced than the last. Scanners examined their bodies, their minds, and even their genetic patterns. The aliens were thorough, but they were looking for weapons and threats that they understood. They had no way to detect the most dangerous thing the humans carried: their ability to think in ways that no other species had ever developed. Finally, they reached the council chambers. The room was designed to intimidate, with a curved ceiling that rose hundreds of feet above the floor. 12 massive seats were arranged in a semicircle, each one occupied by a representative of one of the ruling species, High Magistrate. Velthic of the crystalline hegemony sat in the center position. His body was made of living crystal that reflected light in beautiful but somehow threatening patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with breaking glass. "So, these are the humans," Velthic said, his crystalline form shifting colors as he examined the delegation. "You appear to be a carbon-based species, similar to many others we have encountered." To his right sat the representative of the machine collective, a being that looked like a collection of mechanical parts held together by pure logic. Its red sensors focused on each human in turn, no doubt analyzing everything from their heart rates to their brain activity. Biological organisms with limited technological development. The machine collective representative announced in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. "Preliminary scans indicate primitive weapons capability and basic space travel technology." On Velthic's left, the Psionic Dominion's delegate appeared as a floating sphere of purple energy. It tried to probe the humans' minds but found nothing. Dr. Foster's mental defense training had worked perfectly. "Interesting," the psionic being said, its voice echoing inside everyone's head. "Their minds are unusually structured. I cannot read their thoughts clearly." Ambassador Katie stepped forward and bowed politely. "Honored council members, humanity is grateful for this opportunity to present ourselves for evaluation. We hope to prove worthy of membership in your distinguished organization." Several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. The representative of the Vorthic Empire, a creature that looked like a giant insect made of black metal, clicked its mandibles in amusement. "Worthy," it hissed. "Every species believes they are worthy. Most of them are wrong." The delegate from the Flame Seekers, whose body was made of living fire contained in a transparent shell, spoke next. "Tell us, humans, what makes you believe you deserve to join civilizations that have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years?" Katie maintained her diplomatic smile. "We believe that diversity strengthens any organization. Humanity may be young, but we offer fresh perspectives and new approaches to old problems." More sounds of amusement came from the council members. The representative of the Deep Dwellers, a creature that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension, spoke in a voice that sounded like it came from the bottom of an ocean. "Fresh perspectives," it gurgled. "How refreshing." The last species to offer us fresh perspectives was the Corvani Empire. They had ruled 47 star systems before we evaluated them. What happened to them? Dr. Foster asked innocently, though she already knew the answer. Velthic's crystalline form brightened. They were found to be unsuitable for membership. Their aggressive tendencies posed a threat to galactic stability. The unspoken message was clear: the Corvani Empire had been destroyed, just like every other species that had failed the Council's evaluation. "Now then," Velthic continued, "let us begin your assessment. We will start with a demonstration of your military capabilities. Show us your weapons, your defenses, your strategies for warfare." The council members settled back in their seats, expecting to see the same display they had witnessed dozens of times before. Primitive weapons, basic tactics, and the desperate pleading of a species that suddenly realized they were about to be eliminated. What they got instead would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Katie smiled. And for the first time, it was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. "Of course, honored council members," she said. "We would be happy to demonstrate human military capabilities, but I think you will find our approach somewhat different from what you might expect." The trap was set. The council thought they were about to judge humanity, but they had no idea that they were the ones about to be evaluated, analyzed, and found wanting by the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Colonel Ryan Baker stepped forward from the human delegation, his movements calm and measured. To the council members, he appeared to be just another diplomatic aide, perhaps a military attached with basic knowledge of human defense systems. They had no idea they were looking at one of humanity's most brilliant tactical minds. "Honored council members," Ryan said with a respectful bow, "before we demonstrate our military capabilities, we would like to share some observations we have made during our journey to your magnificent station." High Magistrate Velthek's crystalline form shifted slightly, showing mild interest. "Observations? What could a species that has barely left its home system possibly observe that would interest civilizations spanning thousands of worlds?" Ryan activated a small device and holographic displays appeared in the air above the council chamber floor. The aliens expected to see crude human weapons or primitive battle formations. Instead, they saw detailed analysis charts, tactical assessments, and strategic breakdowns that made several council members lean forward in their seats. "We have spent considerable time studying each of your civilizations," Ryan continued, his voice still respectful but now carrying an undertone of confidence that had not been there before. "The crystalline hegemony, for example, relies heavily on concentrated energy attacks that require significant power build-up time." Velthek's form darkened slightly. "How could you possibly know our military specifications?" Dr. Amy Foster stepped beside Ryan, no longer playing the role of a simple research scientist. "We observed your defense ships during our approach. The energy signatures, the positioning patterns, the response times to various stimuli, they all tell a story to those who know how to read it." The holographic display zoomed in on the crystalline hegemony's fleet formations. Red arrows and tactical notes appeared, showing weak points in their defensive arrangements that the aliens themselves had never noticed. "Your ships position themselves to maximize their energy weapons' effectiveness," Amy continued. "But this creates predictable gaps in your coverage that can be exploited using relatively simple maneuvering tactics." The Machine Collective's representative processed this information for exactly 2.3 seconds before responding, "Impossible. Our computational models show no such weaknesses in crystalline defensive formations." Master Sergeant Tony Clark, who had been standing quietly among the supposed diplomatic staff, spoke for the first time. "Your computational models assume that enemy forces will behave logically and predictably. Humans rarely do either." The council members began to show signs of unease. This was not how evaluations typically proceeded. Species being judged usually spent their time trying to impress the council with their achievements, not analyzing the council's own military systems. Tony walked over to a section of the chamber floor and knelt down, examining the alien materials with apparent interest. "Fascinating construction," he said conversationally. "The metal alloys, the energy distribution systems, the structural support methods, very advanced." The Deep Dweller's representative gurgled ominously. "What are you doing, human?" Tony stood up, brushing dust from his hands. In those few moments of examination, he had identified 17 different materials, calculated their stress tolerances, and determined the most efficient ways to compromise the chamber's structural integrity, using only items that could be found elsewhere on the station. "Just admiring your engineering," Tony replied with an innocent smile. "We humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you don't have the best materials, you learn to make the most of whatever is available." To demonstrate his point, Tony reached into his diplomatic pouch and pulled out what appeared to be a simple translation device. With a few quick adjustments using tools that seemed to be standard maintenance equipment, he transformed it into something that made several council members step back in alarm. "This is now a focused electromagnetic pulse generator," Tony explained. "Casually? Effective range of approximately 50 meters. Capable of disabling most electronic systems not specifically hardened against such attacks. Total construction time, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The Flame Seeker's representative flared brighter. "You constructed a weapon in our sacred chambers." "I constructed a tool," Tony corrected. "Whether it becomes a weapon depends entirely on how it is used." This demonstrates a fundamental difference between human thinking and what we have observed in other species. Lieutenant Karen Scott, who had been introduced as Ambassador Katie's personal secretary, stepped forward. She had been quietly observing each council member's reactions, cataloging their behavioral patterns and psychological responses. Other species seem to focus on building better weapons, Karen said, her voice carrying the authority of someone trained in psychological operations. Humans focus on building better warriors. The difference is significant. She activated her own holographic display, showing comparative analyses of military doctrines across different galactic civilizations. The data was frighteningly comprehensive and accurate. The Vorthic Empire relies on overwhelming firepower delivered through massed fleet actions. Karen continued, looking directly at the insect-like representative. This approach works well against species that fight using similar tactics, but it has never been tested against opponents who refuse to engage in conventional fleet battles. The Vorthic delegate clicked its mandibles angrily. Our battle fleets have conquered hundreds of worlds. Yes, Karen agreed, worlds defended by species that tried to match your firepower with their own. But what happens when faced with opponents who avoid your strengths entirely and instead target your weaknesses? Captain Linda Brooks, the supposed assistant, began highlighting specific vulnerabilities in each council member's military approach. Her analysis was so detailed and accurate that several representatives began consulting their own tactical advisors through private communication channels. The psionic dominion's mind control abilities are indeed formidable, Linda noted, but they require direct mental contact with enemy forces. Against opponents trained in mental defense techniques or those who fight using automated systems, this advantage becomes irrelevant. The purple energy sphere representing the psionic dominion pulsed angrily. No species has ever successfully resisted our mental dominance. Dr. Foster smiled politely. You have never encountered humans before. We have been preparing for this meeting for months, studying your capabilities and developing countermeasures. Every person in this delegation has undergone intensive mental conditioning specifically designed to resist psionic intrusion. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. These humans had not come to beg for membership. They had come prepared for war. Ambassador Katie Brooks finally stepped forward, her diplomatic facade completely gone. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded elite troops in some of humanity's most dangerous missions. Honored council members, you asked us to demonstrate human military capabilities, Katie said. What you have just witnessed is the foundation of human warfare, intelligence, adaptability, and preparation. She gestured to her team. You believe. You are evaluating a diplomatic mission. In reality, you are facing one of humanity's most elite special operations units. Every person you see before you is a highly trained warrior with expertise in different aspects of combat. High Magistrate Velthek's crystalline form had dimmed considerably. This is unprecedented. It gets better, Katie continued. Ryan Baker is not just a colonel, he is the architect of humanity's entire deep space defense strategy. Amy Foster doesn't just conduct research, she has developed psychological warfare techniques that can break the morale of entire enemy fleets without firing a shot. She pointed to each team member in turn. Tony Clark can turn any environment into a weapons factory using nothing but local materials. Karen Scott can analyze and predict enemy behavior patterns with 97% accuracy. Linda Brooks can infiltrate, sabotage, and destroy enemy systems from the inside. The Machine Collective's representative processed this information and reached a conclusion that sent chills through the chamber. You did not come here to be evaluated. You came here to evaluate us. Katie nodded slowly. The Galactic Council has spent 10,000 years judging other species and finding them wanting. But you have never been judged yourselves. You have never faced an opponent that studied you, analyzed your weaknesses, and prepared specifically to defeat you. Captain Ben Rodriguez's voice came through their communication devices from the Defiance. Ambassador, our sensors are detecting increased military activity around the station. It appears several council fleets are moving into attack positions. Katie's smile was cold and dangerous. Let them come. They still don't understand what they're really facing. The council members sat in stunned silence. finally beginning to comprehend that they were no longer the judges in this situation. For the first time in their civilization's history, they had become the ones being evaluated, and they were failing the test badly. The silence in the council chambers stretched for what felt like hours but was actually only 17 minutes and 43 seconds. High Magistrate Velthic's crystalline form had gone completely dark, a sign that the collective consciousness of his entire species was working at maximum capacity to process what had just happened. The machine collective's representative stood motionless, its red sensors flickering rapidly as it ran probability calculations that should have taken milliseconds, but were now stretching into minutes. For the first time in its existence, the machine mind was encountering variables it could not properly quantify. Ambassador Katie Brooks remained standing in the center of the chamber, watching each council member with the patience of a predator who knew her prey had nowhere to run. Around her, her team maintained their positions, ready for whatever response the aliens might choose. Dr. Amy Foster monitored the communication frequencies, picking up fragments of panicked conversations between the council members and their respective homeworlds. The translations were incomplete, but the emotional content was clear: fear, confusion, and something that might have been respect. "They are talking to their military commanders," Amy reported quietly through their secure channel. "Several species are requesting immediate tactical assessments of human capabilities." Colonel Ryan Baker nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving. "The council representatives. Let them talk. Every minute they spend in discussion is another minute for our people back home to prepare." On Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the command center, watching real-time updates from the Defiance. The mission was proceeding exactly as planned, but now came the most dangerous phase. The Council had three basic options: accept humanity as equals, attempt to destroy them, or try to find some middle ground that preserved their own power structure. Commander Pete Sullivan joined Jake at the main display screen. "Our deep space monitoring stations are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Council territory. At least 6 different species are mobilizing their war fleets." "Expected," Jake replied calmly. "The question is whether they will try to attack Earth directly or attempt to capture our delegation first." Pete consulted his tactical display. "Our Zephyr allies report that the Vorthic battle fleet has changed course toward human space. They should reach our outer colonies in approximately 14 standard days," Jake smiled grimly. 14 days? That gives us time to implement Phase 2. Back on Nexus Prime, the Psionic Dominion's representative finally attempted to break the silence. Its purple energy form pulsed as it tried once again to penetrate human mental defenses, only to encounter the same impenetrable barriers as before. "This is impossible," the psionic being announced, its voice echoing in everyone's minds. "No species has ever completely resisted our mental probes. Your thoughts should be as open books to us." Master Sergeant Tony Clark stepped forward slightly. "You keep saying impossible, but here we are. Maybe the problem is not with what we are doing, but with your understanding of what is possible." The Flame Seeker's representative flared brighter. "You dare suggest that our understanding is flawed? We have studied warfare for longer than your species has existed." Lieutenant Karen Scott consulted her behavioral analysis notes. "Studying and understanding are not the same thing. You have studied other species that think like you do. You have never encountered a species that approaches problems from completely different angles." She activated a new holographic display showing communication patterns throughout the station. "For example, in the past 20 minutes, each of your species has followed predictable communication protocols when faced with an unexpected situation. You contacted your military advisors, requested tactical assessments, and began mobilizing defensive responses." The Deep Dweller's representative gurgled uneasily. "That is the logical response to a potential threat." "Logical, yes," Karen agreed, "but also predictable. We knew exactly what you would do because we studied not just your capabilities, but your decision-making patterns. You are powerful, but you are not adaptable." Captain Linda Brooks had been monitoring the station's internal systems during the conversation. Her technical expertise allowed her to tap into information networks that the aliens thought were secure. "I am reading interesting data from your internal communications," Linda announced casually. "It appears that several council members are advocating for immediate military action against Earth. Others are suggesting that humanity should be eliminated before we can share our tactical knowledge with other species." High Magistrate Velthek's form flickered back to life, showing swirling patterns of red and orange that indicated extreme agitation. "You are reading our private communications?" Linda shrugged. "Your security systems are designed to keep out species that think like you do. They were not designed to stop humans who approach computer systems from entirely different perspectives." The Machine Collective's representative finally completed its calculations and reached a conclusion that sent warning signals throughout the chamber. "Analysis complete. Probability of successful military action against human forces, 12.7%. Margin of error, plus or minus 43% due to unknown variables." The other council members turned toward the machine, being in shock. The Machine Collective had never before calculated such low odds for council military success, and the massive margin of error indicated that they simply did not have enough information to make accurate predictions. 12%? The Vorthek representative hissed. "Impossible. Our combined fleets number in the hundreds of thousands." "Numbers mean nothing if your tactics are predictable," Ryan Baker said calmly. "Every war game, every battle simulation, every strategic exercise your species have conducted has been against opponents who fight using conventional methods. You have never faced an enemy that refuses to play by your rules." Ambassador Ketty activated her own communication device, establishing a direct link with Admiral Morrison on Earth. "Admiral, please transmit the Phase 2 intelligence package." Jake's voice came through clearly. "Package transmitted, Ambassador. The Council should be receiving some interesting information right about now." Suddenly, every display screen in the Council chambers activated simultaneously, showing detailed intelligence reports that made several representatives recoil in shock. The screens showed military installations, fleet positions, strategic resources, and tactical vulnerabilities for each council member species. "What you are seeing," Katie explained, "is the result of 2 years of intelligence gathering by human operatives working throughout council territory. We know the location of every major military base, the composition of every fleet, and the strategic importance of every resource node in your civilizations." Dr. Foster stepped forward to provide additional context. "We also know about the 47 species that you eliminated after failed evaluations. What you did not know is that 18 of those species were not actually destroyed." The silence that followed this statement was different from the earlier pause. This was the silence of beings who suddenly realized they had been completely outmaneuvered. "Impossible," Velthek whispered, his crystalline form barely glowing. "We confirmed the destruction of every rejected species." "You confirmed the destruction of their homeworlds and primary colonies," Amy corrected. "But you never bothered to track down every ship, every outpost, every group of survivors who managed to escape. Over the past 2 years, humanity has been in contact with refugee populations from multiple species that you thought you had eliminated." Captain Ben Rodriguez's voice came through their communicators again. "Ambassador, long-range sensors are detecting new ship signatures entering the system. They match the profiles we have on file for several of the survivor species." Katie smiled at the council members. "It seems some old friends of yours have decided to attend this evaluation session." The Ethereal Lord's representative, who had remained silent throughout the entire confrontation, finally spoke. "What do you want from us, humans?" "That is the interesting question," Katie replied. "For 10,000 years you have asked that question of other species, and their answers determined whether they lived or died. Now we are asking that question of you." Tony Clark was already moving toward the chamber's main systems panel. "But first, I think we need to make sure that everyone who should be part of this conversation can actually participate." The council members watched in growing alarm as Tony began making modifications to the station's communication systems. They had no idea that he was opening channels that would allow every species they had ever wronged to witness what happened. Next, the evaluation was no longer about humanity's worthiness to join the Galactic Council. It had become a trial of the Council itself, and the verdict was going to be delivered by the very species they had spent millennia oppressing. The main viewing screen in the council chambers flickered to life, showing dozens of alien ships emerging from hyperspace around Nexus Prime. High Magistrate Velfic's crystalline form went completely transparent as he recognized vessel designs that should not have existed anymore. "The Corvani Empire," he whispered. "But we destroyed their entire civilization 300 years ago." Ambassador Katie Brooks stood calmly in the center of the chamber as more ships appeared on the screen. "You destroyed their homeworlds and major colonies. You did not destroy their spirit or their determination to survive." A new voice filled the chamber, speaking in the deep, resonant tones of the Corvani species. "Greetings, council members. We have waited a long time for this moment." Commander's Rack of the Corvani fleet appeared on the communication screen, his reptilian features showing a mixture of satisfaction and barely controlled anger. Behind him, representatives from 17 other supposedly extinct species could be seen. "This is impossible," the Machine Collective's representative stated, its logical processes struggling to accept the evidence. "Our records show complete elimination of these species." Captain Ben Rodriguez's voice came through the human communication system. "Admiral Morrison is requesting permission to bring the Resilience into the system. We have some additional guests. Who would like to participate in this discussion?" Katie nodded. "Permission granted, Captain." The massive human flagship Resilience dropped out of hyperspace, followed by vessels from 29 different species that the Council had either rejected or marked for future elimination. The combined fleet now surrounding Nexus Prime represented more firepower than the Council had faced in their entire 10,000-year history. Dr. Amy Foster activated a new holographic display, showing the true scope of humanity's operation. "For the past 2 years, while you believed you were the dominant force in the galaxy, humanity has been building an alliance of every species you have wronged." Colonel Ryan Baker stepped forward. "The Galactic Council has maintained power through fear and isolation. You eliminated threats and kept potential allies separated from each other. But you never considered what would happen if someone united all those scattered survivors." Admiral Jake Morrison appeared on the main screen as his ship moved into position. "Council members, you are now facing the combined forces of 47 different civilizations, all united under human leadership and coordination. The Vorthek?" Representative clicked its mandibles nervously. "What do you want? Revenge? The destruction of our civilizations?" Lieutenant Karen Scott consulted her behavioral analysis data. "Revenge would be the logical assumption, based on your own methods of dealing with threats. But humans do not think like you do." Master Sergeant Tony Clark had finished his modifications to the station's systems and turned to face the Council. "We could destroy you right now. Our combined fleets significantly outnumber your forces, and we have tactical advantages you cannot counter. But destroying you would make us no better than you have been." Katie stepped closer to the council seating area. "Instead, we offer you something that you have never offered any other species, a choice." High Magistrate Velfic's form began to flicker with nervous energy. "What kind of choice?" "You can continue to be the Galactic Council," Katie explained, "but you will no longer be its rulers. You will become equal members in a true alliance of civilizations, where decisions are made collectively rather than by the 12 most powerful species." Captain Linda Brooks activated another display showing a new organizational structure. "The reformed Galactic Alliance will include all species, regardless of their technological level or military capabilities. Membership will be based on contribution to the common good, not on the ability to dominate others." The Psionic Dominion's representative pulsed with purple energy. "And if we refuse this offer?" Dr. Foster smiled coldly. "Then you will face the same fate you have imposed on 47 other species. The difference is that this time, The decision will be made by a democratic vote of all affected civilizations, not by the arbitrary judgment of a self-appointed council. Commander Shrek's voice came through the communication system again. The Corvani Empire votes for the complete dissolution of the current council structure and the trial of all council members for crimes against galactic civilization. Other voices began joining in as representatives from the survivor species added their own votes. The pattern was clear. Every species that had suffered under council rule wanted justice. But they were willing to accept reform over revenge if the council agreed to change. Admiral Morrison's image appeared on all screens throughout Nexus Prime. The human proposal is simple. Dissolve the current council system and replace it with a democratic alliance where every species has a voice. Council members who cooperate with this transition will retain their positions as regional representatives. Those who resist will be treated as war criminals. The Machine Collective processed this information for several minutes before responding. The probability of successful resistance is now calculated at 0.03%. Logic dictates acceptance of human terms. The Flame Seeker's representative dimmed significantly. How do we know you will honor these agreements? What prevents you from becoming the new oppressors once you have power? Tony Clark answered while making final adjustments to the station systems. Because our entire military doctrine is based on alliance building, not domination, we succeed by making our friends stronger, not by keeping our enemies weak. Karen Scott added, human psychology is fundamentally different from yours. We gain security through cooperation, not through fear. A galaxy full of strong allies is safer for humanity than a galaxy full of weak subjects. The Deep Dweller's representative gurgled thoughtfully. This is unprecedented. In 10,000 years, no species has ever offered to share power rather than seize it completely. Katie nodded. That is exactly why the current system has failed. Power concentrated in the hands of a few always leads to corruption and abuse. True stability comes from power distributed among many. High Magistrate Velthic's crystalline form slowly began to brighten again. If we agree to this transition, what guarantees do we have that our civilizations will not be destroyed by those we have wronged? Commander Zrak answered from his ship. Humans have convinced us that justice is more valuable than revenge. We want our civilizations rebuilt, not yours destroyed. But this requires genuine change, not just words. Captain Ben Rodriguez reported from the Defiance. All Council fleets have stopped their advance toward human space. Several species are requesting permission to send diplomatic representatives to discuss the new alliance structure. Dr. Foster consulted her analysis data. Social psychology indicates that this transition will be difficult but successful if all parties commit to genuine cooperation. The alternative is a galactic war that nobody can win. Admiral Morrison's voice filled the chamber one final time. The vote must be unanimous among current council members. Either you all agree to the transition, or we proceed with the complete dissolution of your authority. The silence stretched for nearly an hour as council members consulted with their home governments. Finally, High Magistrate Velthic spoke for the collective leadership. The Galactic Council accepts the human proposal. We agree to dissolve our current authority structure and participate in the formation of the reformed Galactic Alliance. One by one, the other council members added their agreement. The Machine Collective calculated that cooperation offered the best long-term survival probability. The Psionic Dominion acknowledged that resistance would be futile. Even the proud Vorthek Empire agreed to the terms rather than face destruction. Katie smiled as she watched the most powerful beings in the galaxy formally surrender their absolute authority. Welcome to the new galaxy, everyone. I think you will find that sharing power is much more rewarding than hoarding it. 3 months later, the first session of the Reformed Galactic Alliance convened with representatives from over 200 different species. The council chambers had been rebuilt to accommodate democratic discussion rather than authoritarian judgment. Lieutenant Karen Scott delivered the opening address to the assembled delegates. For the first time in galactic history, every species has a voice in determining their common future? This is not the end of an old system, it is the beginning of a new age. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in 10,000 years, that change represented hope rather than fear for civilizations across the stars.